Before we talk about Bloodbath, we need to talk about the one behind it all, GDev. He's a 20-year-old developer from Germany, the CEO of F2 Games, and the lead developer of GoreBox and the Tabung. Over the years, he's worked on various projects, including an Android port of SCP Containment Breach. But today, we're focusing on the evolution of GoreBox, starting with its first concept, Bloodbath. The concept for what would later become GoreBox started forming around 2017 to 2018. However, Bloodbath officially began development on April 5, 2019, marking the first time a Gore doll ever met its death on camera. The original Gore doll model has an interesting history. The texture and animations used in early Bloodbath gameplay came from the RPG character Mechanim animation pack. Back then, the game felt more like a simple shooter where you went through levels killing enemies, or at least that's what it seemed like to me. In reality, there was only one map, which had a resemblance to GoreBox's current chamber and facility maps. The guns in Bloodbath were pretty clunky. There weren't even reload animations, but one thing stood out right from the start: the gore. GDev nailed the core mechanics of dismemberment and blood effects early on. A new version of Bloodbath introduced a second map. This outdoor map had white, unfinished floors. Sound familiar? That same map evolved into GoreBox's current Pillars map, the one where you face off against Verse Curse. You can even spot the exact platform where Verse Curse stands in today's game. And the skybox kind of resembled the current ones we have today. Players could drag NPCs around and interact with the environment. After Bloodbath, GDev began development on GoreBox Classic. Or maybe it was a continuation, it's hard to say for sure. What we do know is that GoreBox Classic introduced sandbox elements, making it feel more like Gmod. One of the standout features was the appearance of the Legacy Tower, which would later evolve into the Legacy map we see today. Between the development of GoreBox Classic and Remastered, GDev worked on another project, GoreBox Prototype. This version felt very different, drawing heavy inspiration from GTA. You could make AI Gore dolls surrender, which was a pretty neat feature. It also had a day and night cycle, NPCs and enemies, making it feel more dynamic. It was like a sandbox crime simulator. Sometime between Bloodbath, Prototype, and Classic, GDev, or maybe someone else, thought, hey, you know what would be cool? A full-on GoreBox movie. Yeah, you heard that right. There was actually a plan for a film called the Bloodbath movie. And keep in mind, this was still around 2020. GoreBox was barely out of its early phases, and yet GDev had the insane idea that this game was big enough to get a full-on movie adaptation. Of course, as you probably guessed, it was never finished. But hey, we do have some teaser footage that shows what it could have looked like.
Society continues to fall among the criminality rises of the streets. Assault and murder is everyday basis. The law enforcement. Society continues to fall among the criminality rises of the streets. Assault and murder is everyday basis. The law enforcement.
Yeah, this man was dreaming big. The idea was that the movie would be released for $1 with free teaser videos to hype it up. And while it never saw the light of day, it's still crazy to think that at one point, GoreBox almost had its own official movie. Imagine if it had actually been finished. Would it have been an underground cult classic? Would it have been absolute garbage?
I guess we'll never know.
There isn't much information available about Bloodlight, but here's what we know. It was a multiplayer game, possibly the first GoreBox iteration to include multiplayer. You could play as different characters in the multiplayer mode. It introduced the conspiracy map, which is still used in the current GoreBox. January 2nd, 2021. Damn, it really has been that long. I know you've all been waiting for this, so let's talk about one of the more iconic iterations of the GoreBox series. GoreBox Remastered laid much of the groundwork for what would eventually become GoreBox Animosity. From the main menu soundtrack to its maps, weapons, and NPCs, everything in this iteration feels like the foundation of the modern-day GoreBox, though admittedly with less polish. But despite all that, Remastered had its own unique charm.
For my skill.
Gore mechanics saw an improvement in this version, along with some other notable features. You could make your own maps, drive cars, and of course, there was more blood. Because it wouldn't be GoreBox without more blood. May 30th, 2021. GoreBox Remastered hit 1,000 downloads on its first day of release. Soon after, it skyrocketed to 100,000 downloads, July 3rd, 2021. The Pit Valley map appeared for the first time, albeit in a smaller scale than its current version. July 9th, 2021. The first ever custom map for GoreBox was submitted by Fashnime. July 15th, 2021. The Legacy map got its iconic look, which would later become the GoreZone Legacy map and the Afterglow map. August 21st, 2021. The Facility map was created in Remastered. Alright, so when you boot up GoreBox Remastered, you'll see the usual stuff. Sandbox mode, some maps, all normal. But then things get weird. In the menu, there are 5 extra game modes that you can't actually play. Multiplayer. Okay, fair. Makes sense. Campaign. Disasters. Natural disasters? Explosions? No clue. Blood rush. This sounds cool, but what even was it supposed to be? GBRP? GoreBox roleplay? Like an RP mode in GoreBox? Of course, none of these game modes were ever finished or playable. But seriously, what the fuck was GDev smoking when he put these in the menu? Were these real plans? Just placeholders? Or was this just another classic case of GDev going, yeah, I'll add that, and then never actually doing it? Between the times of GoreBox Remastered and GoreBox Definitive Edition, we got something a little different. GoreZone. Unlike the more sandbox-oriented versions of the game, GoreZone was focused on PvP action. It had some maps like F2 Square which would later make its way into GoreBox Animosity, and a few other cool additions. But perhaps one of the most notable shifts during this time was in the development team. Bart. Yep, the same Bart responsible for those new weapon animations we've all seen, stepped in to take the lead on development. Even though GoreZone wasn't as expansive as other versions, it definitely brought its own unique flavor to the series and helped to keep things fresh before the next major installment. This stage of the game was like a bridge between the iconic GoreBox Remastered and what we now know as GoreBox Animosity. It still had some of the classic remastered vibes, while teasing many elements we see in Animosity today. This phase had a ton of stuff going on.
Whew, finally finished this update. Now, I just need to upload it. Alright, let's go. And there you go. Oh wait, what? The update is shit. It does not perform well on my cell phone. Fix it.
Alright, let's talk about Uncoha, the GoreBox spin-off that never made it. If you've watched my previous video, you already know a bit about it, but for those who don't, here's the deal. Uncoha was meant to be an open-world version of GoreBox, set in a city with some enterable buildings, but honestly, the gameplay was bare bones. There wasn't much to do, but the idea, pretty ambitious. Imagine running around a full city in the GoreBox world. That alone is wild to think about. Unfortunately, the game was canceled before it could fully take shape. Whether it was due to technical issues, time constraints, or just GDev deciding to move on, we don't really know. What we do know is that Uncoha could have been something unique, and with that, it's time to wrap things up.